About Gregory Daly. Now, there's more information on my brother Greg at Noahide Videos Bible, the Noahide channel, the main Noahide channel. And in the Daly family playlist, you get information there on Greg Daly that's more elaborate. I'll be more brief here. Greg's my brother. I'm living with him currently in Forestfield in Perth, Western Australia. I'm 49. I'm turning 50 in 9 days on the 20th of November. In 2022, I was born in 1972. Greg's 3 years younger. He was born on the 14th of February 1976 in Cooma Hospital, New South Wales, Australia. His first home was in Berriedale, where we lived at the time in the 1970s, which is west of Cooma, 20 miles. Gregory's married to Christy Daly and has a son, James Daly. There's information of the Daly clan here on James Daly. That's Gregory's son. Greg's a redhead. A little bit shorter than me. I'm about 6 foot. Greg's just a little bit shorter. Not much, just a little bit. He's the same sort of build as me, except he's not as fat. Reasonably healthy, has a reasonably healthy diet. He attended St. Pat's School in Cooma from kindergarten through to about year 8 or something like that. Year 7 or 8, something like that. And then when we moved to Canberra, he studied at Morris Brothers in Canberra in the Woden district. So he didn't finish St. Pat's because we moved to Canberra as a family. Greg was somewhat popular in school. I wasn't particularly popular, nor was Matthew. The girls were okay. Greg was okay. He passed well enough with the kids by the looks of it from my observations. We lived at 6 Bradley Street in Cooma, where Gregory lived as well, and 7 Ben Street in Berriedale in the 70s, Cooma in the 80s, and 29 Merriman Crescent, Macarthur in Canberra in the 1990s and beyond. Greg's moved around a bit with Christy and James, his son. They've lived in Canberra a few times and Perth a few times. And they've lived in Melbourne as well, in St Kilda, I think it was, in a flat there. Greg is into classical music. He's grade 4 or something in piano. He does tutoring. He's worked in Australian Tax and Australian Bureau of Statistics and currently works as a aged care worker and does a little bit of tutoring as well. And he's training in robotics this year to try and get some work in the robotics-related field. He has degrees in economics and arts, I think it is, or philosophy or something, and a grad dip in accounting, I think it is. He might have some other qualifications, I'm not really sure. He's worked his whole life. He's 40... Oh, what did he be? 44 now or something like that. No, not 44. He'd be 46 now or something like that. I think Gregory is now. He's 46. And he's worked his whole life since leaving school. He's hardly ever been unemployed, I don't think. He's always been pretty much stable in work. He's a Roman Catholic. He goes to church semi-regularly, but he still goes to church with Christy. Christy goes quite regularly with James. James sometimes, and Greg goes semi-regularly, it seems, from observations. From time to time he goes a bit more. I'm not 100% sure on their exact church-going activities, but they disappear on Sunday a reasonable amount. I've been here 6 months with them now, and they disappear a reasonable amount. Gregory likes music, and he likes video games. They've got a few systems, Xbox systems and Sony PlayStation systems. He likes that well enough. Recently, he designed a squatter game for computers, on a software computer game, based on the Australian board game Squatter. Greg designed a system for that, and it took him a while. And I haven't had a proper look through it yet, but it looks okay enough. Possibly freeware sort of stuff in reality, but he's put the effort in. He writes. He's got a video channel on YouTube, Daily Stories and Adventures, where he's done different videos of this and that. He writes for Centerpole Wars stories and does music and Lego Masters and some video game things as well and stuff like that. Daily Stories and Adventures. You can find information there on Greg. He's been married about... James is about 15 now, nearly 14, 15, somewhere around there. He's in year 9, I think, is James. So he's about 15 nearly, and I've been married about 16 years, I think, somewhere around there. Let me see. Gregory likes... he read fantasy novels when he was younger, around the time I was reading in the late 80s, early 90s. He'd read a few of them. He read the Spell Singer books by Alan Dean Foster, the David Eddings books. He probably read Tolkien. Probably, I'm not 100% sure. He likes Star Wars movies. Gregory watches a lot of Star Wars with James, and our family is pretty big on Star Wars. So likes Star Wars movies. He's not a big comics man like me. He's read a few in his time, but he's not a big comics man like me. He doesn't have any major hobbies. Just sort of keeps himself busy with a bit of TV, and he's on the computers a lot at the moment doing his robotics work, and he plays solitaire a fair bit, and a jigsaw puzzle game on the computer, assembling jigsaw puzzle pieces to make a jigsaw puzzle. He plays that a fair bit. Read Spellsinger by Gary. What else did he read? Some of the other fantasy books I was in at the time. I think he read a lot of the magician books by Raymond D. Feist. He read a lot of that. And other sorts of things from the 80s he read a bit of. He did academically quite well in school. Gregory's not exactly a genius, and I'm not a genius, but we're quite a bit above average in intelligence. Greg's quite high. He's not. We wouldn't be called genius, but we're above average, and Greg's quite good at mathematics, where I'm more stronger at literature. So we're not the genius level, but we're above average intelligence. We're reasonably bright people. Matt was bright as well, but my older brother Matthew died in 2013, I think it was. He was bright enough as well, but Matt had some issues and stuff, but Greg's pretty bright. He's probably a tad smarter on technical issues than me, where in some other areas, I mean, they talk about in human development theorists multiple levels of intelligence. People have different intelligence levels in different areas, and I think I'm stronger in some things and Greg's stronger in other things. On music, we're reasonably even. Greg's training himself more on music than me, but we're both pretty strong on composition. So Greg does composition as well, and he owns a home. This home in Forestfield he owns. We're receiving soon a share of the home in Macarthur, which is to be sold, and Gregory will receive a share, roughly about 200,000 Australian dollars, roughly by the looks of it. Maybe a bit over for his share, and this will all be paid off, I would imagine. Pretty much paid off. Possibility that they might move. All sorts of things might happen. At this stage, generally the plan is to stay here, but when the money comes in, there might be some discussions, and where we are as a family, if I probably won't still be with them, but some decisions might possibly be made. It could be interesting. That's what's coming up soon enough. But Greg's a little bit sullen. A little bit sullen is Greg. He's not a joy-filled Catholic. He's not filled with the Holy Ghost, bursting with the joy of the Holy Spirit. Not exactly Greg's way. He's not depressing. Greg's not depressing. He's a little bit moody, a little bit, but he's sullen, but he gets happy enough and animated enough sometimes with James, and when they're playing video games and so forth, he's not sad, he's not melancholic, he's not depressing in any way. He's a positive enough person with a good attitude on life. He's quite lawful, never been much of a sinner. He's not a drinker in alcoholic levels, in drunkard levels. He's been drunk a few times in life, but he doesn't get drunk. He drinks a bit more alcohol than me. I don't drink much. I do drink, but not much. Greg drinks a little bit more than me, probably about the same as Matt, but not a huge amount. Not really regular drinkers. Not even regular drinkers, I don't think. Even though Chrissy usually likes a drop of wine on an evening, she'll have a glass of wine, whereas Greg once every few weeks he seems to get a six-pack of like cider or sometimes beer and things like that, sort of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, sort of that time frame, a six-pack. So Not a huge drinker. Doesn't get drunk and sets a pretty decent example. Doesn't smoke. Christy smokes. Greg doesn't smoke and seems not really interested. Maybe health reasons. He's got a little bit of a sensitive tummy at times. Gets sick occasionally. A little bit sensitive. Perhaps to Christy's cooking sometimes, but and he moans and whinges a bit like me as well. I moan and whinge when I get too sick and I go, oh. Greg can moan a bit as well. Oh, it hurts. Yeah. But Greg's not a brawler. Matt wasn't a brawler. I'm not a brawler. We're not tough brawling blokes. Greg's an all-round everyday sort of fella. He's strict. Christy and Gregory are strict. They raised James quite strictly. They're not too strict, but they are strict. And Christy once said they were progressive. I don't think they're terribly progressive in practice. They're tolerant, but I don't think they're terribly progressive. He's not a fundamentalist. He's sort of evolution's his game, but he believes in God by the looks of it. But standard Catholic thought these days, isn't it? A lot of them are probably evolutionary sort of systems, and he might have all sorts of ideas. I don't really know if he's a Trinitarian believer in God. He might believe in the Catholic concept of the Trinity. I don't really know. He likes to keep his beliefs mostly to himself, but he seems to be a Catholic by the looks of it in the way he goes to church regularly enough. Don't really know. That's Greg's business, so I'm not one to pry too much. He's a nice enough person. He's not really standoffish. It's not really a problem with Greg. He gets along with people. He doesn't stand out as the brightest spark, nor is he trying to. Doesn't really care. Happy enough with life to live a regular enough life by the looks of it. I once asked him a bit of philosophy and sort of have a holiday, sort of pay your bills, get you home, family things, how he spends his money, and a balanced sort of approach with Greg. Not too fussy. He's not too fussy a person, but he likes the house quite clean. Greg's a pretty clean living fella, like Matthew. I'm a bit grubby, but Greg and Matt are pretty clean, and Jacinta and Rich are clean as well, and so is Mum. I'm a bit grubby, black sheep in the family perhaps, but Greg likes it not quite spick and span, but they're pretty clean at Greg and Christy. The house is kept in pretty good order. He's a nice enough brother. I'm happy to have Greg as my brother, and he's Australian, of course, and a bit of an Aussie. He's not an Ocker Aussie. Greg's not Ocker. We're not an Ocker family. It's not our way. You don't really get any Australiana in the Daly family of Cyril Daly or Peter Paul Daly, I would imagine, terribly much. I doubt that we've got much Australiana in us. We're not really Aussies. Greg's an Aussie, but he's not really, if you know what I mean. He's more of an Anglophonian world sort of person, I think, Gregory Daly, and everything I see of it. You don't get Australiana in this house. I think there might be a boomerang somewhere on the wall or something, but Christy's Filipino, so I mean, Greg's more of a citizen, I think, more of an Australian citizen and human being, probably more than being an Aussie or anything like that. We're not exactly patriots. We're not unpatriotic, but we're not exactly patriot sort of kinds. Not really the Daily way, terribly much perhaps. Dad was no Aussie. He was a Catholic. He was Australian. He was an Aussie, but it wasn't anything we ever harked on about. We weren't into Aussie culture. Just into standard TV culture. Greg's just standard TV. Just, the melange of Anglophonian stuff. American, British, Australian, bit of Kiwi, bit of Irish. Likes the Kerry girls. We're an Irish family, aren't we? We're Dalys, but yeah. I don't know. Greg would probably have some responses to these things I'm said. He'd possibly correct me on some issues and might affirm some of what I'm saying. I don't really know. But, yeah, my bro Greg.